So the presidential debate was last night. Let's take a look.
I was in Dayton, Ohio, and a woman grabbed my arm and she said, "I've been out of work since May. Can you help me?"
And I said, sure, I'll help you. And I made her shine my shoes for a penny. I could have paid her a nickel, but why waste 4 cents on trash like that? Little did she know that when she was down there shining my shoes, I stole $3 out of her purse, so I made $2.99 out of the whole deal. And then later on, just for fun, I bought her apartment and evicted her. And then I sold her daughters into slavery in the Middle East. But that's what she gets for touching my arm without my permission. You don't touch the Romney. The Romney touches you.
I know what it takes to get small business growing again, to hire people.
Aren't you the same Mitt Romney who was the CEO of Bain Capital, which shipped a bunch of U.S. jobs overseas and routinely bought and liquidated small businesses? You're still that Mitt Romney, right? Oh, wait, of course you're not that Mitt Romney. That was Mitt Romney version 12, and we're at least up to version 18 or 19 by now. It seems like the only thing that ties all of the Romneys together is their lust for power. Isn't that strange, how that seems to be the only consistent element to Mitt Romney's personality? I think it's kind of strange, personally.
Yeah, Governor Romney and I both agree that our corporate tax rate is too high.
I'm so glad that both parties agree that corporate taxes are too high, because, you know, in a time when corporate profits are at an all-time high and yet the rest of the economy is struggling, you would think that the opposite would be true, that it's actually safe to tax corporations more since they're doing so well. But both of these candidates firmly take a stand against that sort of thinking and say, hey, even though these corporations are making more money than they've ever made in history, now is not the good time to be taxing them. I'm sorry, but worrying that our corporate tax rate is too high is kind of like worrying that Rush Limbaugh is going to starve to death.
I also want to close those loopholes that are giving incentives for companies that are shipping jobs overseas. I want to provide tax breaks for companies that are investing here in the United States.
Note to Obama, if you are going to talk about companies shipping jobs overseas, you might want to mention that your opponent was the CEO of one of them.
First of all, I don't have a $5 trillion tax cut. I don't have a tax cut of the scale that you're talking about. My view is that we ought to provide tax relief to people in the middle class. I'm not looking for a $5 trillion tax cut. What I've said is I won't put in place a tax cut that adds to the deficit.
Obama should be able to knock this one out of the park. All he has to do is show that the Tax Policy Center crunched the numbers and discovered that, yes, Mitt Romney's tax plan will cut taxes $5 trillion over 10 years, and that is just not economically feasible. But instead, Obama goes with this response.
Now, Governor Romney's proposal that he's been promoting for 18 months calls for a $5 trillion tax cut, on top of $2 trillion of additional spending for our military. Well, for 18 months he's been running on this tax plan, and now, 5 weeks before the election, he's saying that his big, bold idea is never mind.
Is that it, Obama? Is that your refutation? You're not going to hold his feet to the fire? You're not going to ask for specifics? Because every time that Romney has been asked for specifics, he falters. So why wouldn't you ask him for specifics and watch him falter? That's what you need to do. You need to be tripping him up. Instead, Obama lets Romney get away with murder. If Obama was a homicide detective and he walked into a room and there was a body covered in stab marks and Mitt Romney was hunched over the body with a bloody knife and a depraved look in his eyes, Obama would probably look at him and say, hey Mitt, we better get out of here. I think there's a killer on the loose. Pretty much everyone right now is talking about the stylistic difference between Obama and Romney in this debate. Romney looked confident. He either looked at Obama or he looked at the audience. Obama spent most of his time looking down, and when he did look at the audience, he looked at the audience on the opposite side from his opponent. It was almost like he was scared to look at Romney. What the fuck, dude? You're the president.
It also means I cannot reduce the burden paid by high-income Americans. So any language to the contrary is simply not accurate.
Mr. President?
Well, I think let's talk about taxes, because I think it's instructive. Now,
Obama should have marched in there and kicked this guy's ass all over the place, but instead, Obama seemed timid and meek, and Romney seemed like he was full of piss and vinegar. I know a lot of people want to act like that doesn't matter, like, you know, it's not a personality contest, but it is. And part of it is for good reason. No one wants the president to be some timid little bitch. Everyone wants the president to be confident. Everyone wants the president to be the kind of guy that can get shit done, and that's the kind of guy that Mitt Romney looked like. Unfortunately, the kind of shit that Mitt Mitt Romney actually wants to get done is not the kind of shit that he was talking about last night. In fact, both of these guys last night were talking about how much they love the middle class. The middle class is just the greatest thing ever. And of course they're going to suck the middle class's dick. Because in America, if you're not dirt poor or filthy rich, you pretty much consider yourself middle class. So it's the biggest demographic ever to pander to.
I also promised that I'd fight every single day on behalf of the American people, and the middle class, and all those who are striving to get in the middle class. I've kept that promise.
There's no question in my mind that if the president were to be reelected, you'll continue to see a middle class squeeze, with incomes going down and prices going up.
But that's all they're doing is pandering. You know, if 70% of Americans were pedophiles, these guys would be out there saying, like, we need to get fences removed from schools for easier access, and we need to have lower age of consent laws, and we need to have skimpier preschool uniforms. They would be out there saying that shit, because that's how desperate they are to be in power. Mitt Romney looked passionate out there today, but he's not passionate about policy. He's passionate about power. Obama isn't as passionate about power because he realizes now that power is not all it's cracked up to be. Ultimately, if I had to summarize these debates in one word, that word would be boring. And it's not boring because they were talking a lot about policy. I'm a policy guy. The problem I had is that they were not passionate about policy. I have had more passionate debates about Coca-Cola versus Pepsi than these guys had about the proper course for our economy. And it really doesn't surprise me because what you saw last night was two conservatives arguing over minutia. That's all you saw. One of them was more confident, one of them was more timid, one of them had policies that made a little bit more sense than the other, but at the end of the day, they were both espousing conservative ideology as borne out by statements like this.
Yeah, Governor Romney and I both agree that our corporate tax rate is too high.
If you're a true progressive, you have no horse in this race. And in fact, if you are a true conservative of the Barry Goldwater era of conservatism, then you have no horse in this race. What we had last night was two shills on stage pandering to the middle class with their rhetoric, when in reality both of them are slaves to moneyed interests.
So who won? I have a better question. Who cares? Romney is a chameleon who inhabits whatever persona he thinks will suit him best at the moment. Last night, he changed or misrepresented his policies on taxes, Medicare, healthcare reform, and spending. Obama, meanwhile, had his chance. Sure, Obama's rhetoric is closer to my heart, but that's all that it is. Rhetoric. The last 4 years, he has done almost none of what he said he was going to do. He did not close Guantanamo Bay. He did not deliver on his economic promises. He did not withdraw from Iraq on the timetable he claimed he would. In fact, he withdrew on fucking Bush's timetable. What he did do was increase drone strikes, lead the war on file sharing, increase federal raids of medical marijuana dispensaries, militarize our police forces on the federal government's dime, and create provisions in the NDAA 2012 to give the government the power to detain U.S. citizens without trial or charge. Only Obamacare and Obama's position on gay rights and women's rights make Obama the superior candidate, and even then only by a marginal degree. But if you expect to see considerable economic improvement under either of these men, then you are smoking drugs more potent than I even knew existed. So who won? Let me put it to you this way. Not you.